Awesome. Well, welcome everybody tonight to our kickoff meeting for our active transportation plan, and also welcome to the brand new library. I hope if you haven't had a chance to be here yet over the last several weeks, I hope after tonight's presentation you just take a minute to walk around the building and check out our great new facility. We're all so very proud of it, and it's exciting to be here yet again for another town meeting. So again, welcome tonight. I want to tell you just to kick off the meeting here, let you know what we're doing, and then I'll invite some folks up here too who are going to give us a presentation. But essentially, the active transportation plan is a study that's designed to develop a plan to understand our current and future needs and identify strategies to better accommodate bicycle, pedestrian, and transit-oriented travel to, from, and through the town of Irondequoit. We're a residential community, a largely residential community, and as such, we thought the town board and the town of Irondequoit thought what we really needed to do was step back and take a minute and see how can we make the town a better and more hospitable place for people who want to get around using other modes of transportation besides their car. And you start to see things pop up around town, things like I-Square, that are perfectly designed for that, to be situated close to a neighborhood so people can walk to I-Square, people can ride their bikes to I-Square. But if we're going to encourage those types of development and start looking toward the future, what we also wanted to do was step back and look at the town's infrastructure, look at our sidewalks, look at our streets, and make sure that the infrastructure, our roads, our avenues for travel around town can accommodate those kinds of activities. So what we're hoping to do is provide a clear framework for the town so we can better understand community preferences and needs related to active transportation, analyze our current gaps in walking, biking, and transit systems, and identify potential infrastructure improvements, programming, and policy changes. And we're also hoping that this plan will outline a series of strategies and, most importantly, action items that can include constructability analysis, planning level cost estimates, and then we can also, using your input, prioritize those activities and projects. So this really today is the first step in producing that plan that we will hopefully then end up with some concrete action items that the town can work with and the town board can use to help guide our funding and policy decisions over the next several years. There are a few people I want to recognize who are here today. We have from the town board, Lori Barnum and Dave Seeley are here, if you guys could just wave. We also have from the town staff our Commissioner of Public Works, who's in charge of our roads and sidewalks, that's Pat Meredith, and his deputy, Bob Kiley. And I also want to recognize my Director of Constituent Services, Sarah Culp, and also, and very importantly tonight, our Planning and Zoning Administrator, Carrie Ivers, who worked diligently at town to help us receive these grants. This has been a priority for us. You've seen us go through these planning exercises with our master plan that we did last year. We're working on a senior service study, and now Carrie's helping us with the active transportation plan. We're able to do this tonight through a generous grant through the Genesee Transportation Council. So we also want to thank Rich Perrin and Bob Torzinski for their help and their partnership. The town, when we received these grant funds, went through an exhaustive effort. Lori Barnum helped participate on this, and we interviewed and spent many days actually interviewing a number of companies. And we were fortunate enough to have found Barton and LaJudas and Sprinkle, who agreed to work with us, and we contracted with them to walk us through here. And it's particularly exciting because we have Barton and LaJudas, a local company, to give us a local perspective, who also chose to partner with Sprinkle, who's a national firm. So we could take a look at cutting-edge ideas and things that communities across the country are engaged in when it comes to active transportation. So to lead off the conversation tonight, where we're going to tell you a little bit more about the plan in detail, and then at the end answer some questions and get some feedback, I'm going to invite Tom Robinson from Barton and LaJudas, and he's going to go through the PowerPoint here. So Tom, if you'd like to come forward. Thanks. Okay.
We need something that goes from Culver Ridge Plaza to Hudson, or to the post office on Ridge Road. There's no bus. If you want to take a bus from where I live on Kings Highway to the post office, you have to go to Irondequoit Plaza, transfer.
Okay.
And it's $2 over, $2, you know.
Okay.
I mean, you can get an all-day $3.
Great. Thank you for that. All right. Thank you. All right, Tom, if you'd like to come forward. Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'm Tom Robinson. I'm a landscape architect and project manager with Barton LaJudas here in Rochester, New York. With me tonight is Peyton McLeod from Sprinkle Consulting in Tampa, Florida. We're really excited to be here and kick off this project with Irondequoit. We've worked together on several different active transportation plans in this region and in Monroe County. Irondequoit has some particular opportunities that are really exciting for us. Peyton's already been out in the field for a day and a half, getting to know the systems in Irondequoit, and we'll have a couple of minutes to hear what his initial observations are. Congratulations to the town for getting the funding from the GTC to do this project. Bob, thanks for writing the check. Always welcome. And it is really thrilling to be in this library too. It's absolutely beautiful. So a really good feeling and a really good way to kick off the project. And your AV works perfectly. I love that. We usually start just by defining what active transportation is. I'm probably preaching to the choir with most of the folks in the room, but you never know. Active transportation just refers to different means of getting around by human power rather than automobile or burning fossil fuels. Primarily walking and bicycling, but not necessarily limited to just those two means. We use the term active transportation instead of some other ones because it helps express this key connection between transportation systems and healthy environments and healthy living. We throw this diagram early and often about the different layers and areas of community sustainability because what we do with the transportation systems is going to impact and have outcomes on other areas that we're concerned about: environmental sustainability, economic sustainability, people's health, and social equity as well. So all of those things play into and are derived from what we do with the transportation systems in Irondequoit. Barton LaJudas is, we have a Rochester office with about 15 people. We're about 170 people in 7 offices in New York State. Sprinkle Consulting, as Adam mentioned, is a really cutting-edge national-level transportation planning firm in Tampa, Florida. We've worked together, I think, on 5-ish projects together, and it's a great synergy between the two groups, and that's why we keep coming back and working together. So we're very excited to apply our knowledge and our passion and the lessons we've learned from working with some of your neighbors on other active transportation initiatives. Sometimes we get asked why we team with a firm from Tampa, Florida to work in Rochester, New York. This map is a good explanation of why. Sprinkle has worked on really important federal level design guidance that applies all over the country, including AASHTO Bicycle Facilities Design Guidelines and the Pedestrian Facility Design Guidelines, work for Federal Highway, and work for a number of state DOTs throughout the country. So they really do bring a national perspective and an overview of best practices, and then we apply our local knowledge and what you tell us about the community to decide what's fitting and what's most appropriate for Irondequoit. So together we've worked on projects in Penfield, in the city of Rochester, town of Greece. We're currently finishing up the active transportation plan for Henrietta. We're working with the village of Brockport. So we're sort of have Irondequoit surrounded in terms of your connecting communities and intermunicipal connectivity. I think we've studied over 300 centerline miles of roadways in the neighboring towns. And this is important because pedestrian and especially bicycle travel doesn't stop at the town lines. So while we're really focused on making improvements in the town of Irondequoit, we also want to recognize that you're part of a bigger system. And we want to be able to have everybody move seamlessly, safely, and conveniently to the neighboring communities as well. So the why of the project has to do with the benefits of active transportation. And I think probably most of us are familiar with these in overview. But the exciting thing is there's more and more research coming in all the time. So our design and our concepts are really stronger and stronger evidence-based as we go along project to project. Healthy people are probably the key. We all understand the importance of physical activity. Specifically, active transportation helps us integrate physical activity into our daily routines and our daily lives. So it piggybacks on top of fitness and recreation activities. But if you can get exercise and be mobile just in your daily lifestyle, you're ahead of the curve in terms of maintaining your health, which obviously overlaps with local economy. Everybody is literally paying the price for cost of health care, health insurance, health delivery. How we deal with our mobility can have a big impact with that. So certainly the fact that I think CDC now says that as a country we spend about $160 billion a year on health problems related to inactivity. There's no magic bullet for that, but how we deal with our mobility and transportation systems can alleviate that to some extent. A less obvious one is sort of the mobility for all, or the transportation equity, the social aspect. There are user groups that we don't think about that much that are somewhat left out of the transportation equation. So folks who are not capable or can't afford to or simply choose not to use automobiles as their prime transportation, whether it's the elderly, visually impaired, physically impaired, people without the financial resources to support an automobile. Active transportation can help them, and this approaches transportation equity and keeping all our community members involved and treated equally. So our active transportation plan is a type of master plan. And if you want to boil that down to its essence, a master plan really answers three basic questions. The first question is, what do we have? Second question is, what do we want? And the third question is, how do we get there? And that is sort of the core process that we're going to be going through with you over the next year for our active transportation plan in Irondequoit. The first question, what do we have? That's answered by the first phase of our project, which is an inventory of existing conditions combined with the input we get from the residents and the public. So those are the two main streams of information we put together to understand existing systems and conditions. What do we want is essentially derived from the project goals and objectives. And that's something that we will be working through with the steering committee, with the town staff. But it's probably safe to start by saying that certainly safety, sustainability, and connectivity are key objectives for this project. And we'll be building that list of objectives as we go along. The third question, how do we get there? That's where we look at a set of improvements. And it's not just infrastructure. What we know now is infrastructure by itself does not create a sustainable system. It has to be supported by policies and programs, outreach and education, enforcement, and maintenance. All of those things have to work together to have a robust, viable, active transportation system. So inventory of existing conditions. This is the first phase of the project, and we'll be working on this for the next 2 to 3 months. We've actually started it. Peyton's been here for the last day and a half doing field data collection related to the level of service analysis. Some of the things we'll be looking at are the bicycle and pedestrian level of service. Peyton will explain that a little bit to you. We assess the crash data, 5-year and 10-year crash data provided primarily by GTC to identify problem areas. We will come up with a list of 6 priority intersections for Irondequoit. We can talk about that a little bit tonight. We'll be working through that with the steering committee and the technical advisory committee. These are not to say there's not more intersections that need work in Irondequoit, but we try to focus our efforts on a few prototypes, and then the improvements and countermeasures we find there we hope can be applied town-wide gradually in the future. Certainly school zones, oops, keep missing that red button, there we go. School zones are a priority. Your 2 school districts Some of the schools in Irondequoit already see, I think, a robust number of kids walking and riding to school. We want to support that as much as we can. Certainly address the infrastructure in the school zones and probably work with the school districts and the town to develop policies and programs that'll sort of train the next generation of movers in Irondequoit. And maybe they'll be walking and riding more and driving their cars a little bit less for short distance trips. Connectivity to key destinations. So we want to build a network and an integrated system and not just spot improvements here and there in the town. It's very important to connect things. We use existing plans and studies. Irondequoit's done a lot of work over the years. So we build upon what you already have, and we don't use our resources to reinvent that. And then we do talk about programs and policies. This includes looking at the town code, any design standards they have, helping the town come up with things that'll be more supportive of bicycle and pedestrian transportation and transit use. The map I threw up here is just one example of some of the interesting inventory that we do. This was from the town of Brighton, and working with their school district as a partner, they actually provided us a GIS layer that showed us where kids were walking from to the different schools, which helped us prioritize routes for pedestrians. It helped us prioritize improvements at different intersections. So that was sort of a circumstance and opportunity that district had a certain level of information that we could use and roll into our plan. The roadways themselves, we look at both the level of service for pedestrians and bicyclists. It's a fairly intensive data collection operation to begin with. Peyton's been here since yesterday afternoon and has been out in the field together with Nicole Cleary from our office. So after a day and a half looking at the system in Irondequoit, do you want to share some initial observations?
Yeah, I'll share first what we're up to, and then maybe some quick observations. Good evening again, everyone. I'm Peyton McLeod. You got the same treatment there. Hello.
That wasn't happening to me.
It likes me. Has anybody seen me out wearing a yellow vest over the past day? Anybody? No, okay. Again, as Tom mentioned, I'm not from around here, but with the amount of times I've been in the Rochester region over the past 5 years, I keep expecting to be granted honorary Monroe County citizenship any day now. Tom mentioned that we're working on a level of service evaluation. So what we're trying to do is really get a snapshot of existing conditions. And it's really getting at how safe or comfortable citizens, bicyclists, pedestrians feel riding and walking along the town's roadways. So we've started with a network of about 80 directional miles of roads, looking at primarily the state and county maintained roadways, arterials and collectors, but also several key town maintained local streets as well. And what we try to get at is looking at between the geometry of the roadway itself and also the traffic patterns, traffic volumes, traffic speeds, how those interact, and really get at again what are your users' perceptions of the roadway. So the way we do that is through bicycle and pedestrian level service. And these were methodologies that were developed, about 20 years ago or so by our firm. They've since been applied on literally hundreds of thousands of miles of roads across the country. There's a document called the Highway Capacity Manual that's the primary reference document for transportation planning. And historically, it's been very auto-centric. The most recent edition has now become much more multimodal in focus, and it includes bicycle and pedestrian methodologies, primarily those same level of service methodologies that we're using to evaluate the town's roadways. So we've been out in the field looking at lane widths, where there are sidewalks, if so, how wide are they? Are they right next to the back of the curb? Is there a buffer area? If there is a buffer area, are there trees there? Sorry about the noise, I don't know what to do about it. But also whether there are bike facilities, whether it's a paved shoulder, shared use paths adjacent to the roadway, how wide those are. So really getting at what's the physical separation between the bicycle and pedestrian environment and the adjacent motor vehicle traffic. And really, of course, it depends a lot on how many cars there are, how fast they're going, whether there are trucks in the mix as well. So yesterday and today we've been working through the rain. Looking forward to tomorrow when things are a little bit drier to wrap that up. And one of the reasons we want to go ahead and introduce that tonight is because when we have our first true public meeting, probably in a couple months from now, one of the things that I'm sure we'll be showcasing are the results of that analysis. You'll be able to see on a relatively easy to understand A through F type grading scale, with A being the best and F being the worst, just like in school, how well the roads are doing currently. And so when we get further along in the planning process, we'll be using that as one of the key indicators for where to focus improvements. The roads that are serving your users relatively well right now, either through existing facilities or some combination of low volumes and speeds, are probably not going to be quite as high priority as those that are really in the most need of improvement and are providing relatively poor conditions right now. In terms of observations, the town, of course, already has a good and thorough sidewalk network. There are, of course, locations where those are closer to motor vehicle traffic than others. You've got quite a few paved shoulders in the town as well. Bicyclists, just from observations, even in spite of the weather, seen quite a few bicyclists out on the roadways, some using the roadway surface, quite a few others using sidewalks. So we'll be working to help improve in-road accommodation there. But really, the network is really well connected. You've got a fairly nice grid network for people to go around. Plenty of opportunities. There are probably going to be some opportunities to restripe some roadways where there might be excess pavement right now, so that maybe some of the wider lanes could potentially be narrowed. Looking at every opportunity we can for relatively low-cost solutions to better accommodate bicyclists and pedestrians. We'll be getting more observations. I don't want to jump to any conclusions at this point, but when we see you again relatively soon, we'll have a lot more to share. So I'll give it back to Tom.
So along with this sort of technical assessment of existing conditions, the other information stream comes from the public. So all you folks who use these networks, these sidewalks, try to get across these infrastructures, these intersections every day, that's a very, very important information source for us. And we rolled that together with the types of assessment that Peyton and his crew are working on. Our public participation is sort of a multi-level strategy. We are going to have a series of public meetings, conventional face-to-face, where everybody comes in and we gather and have dialogue and conversations. We will be utilizing the town's website. We'll be utilizing social media. We are going to create an online active transportation survey, which is a very good way to get some general information about people's preferences, what they perceive as barriers to walking and riding in Arundecoit. It doesn't answer all the questions. In fact, we try to keep it to a very concise list of questions because more people tend to fill it out that way. But every project we do, we try to try out some new tools, and we're going to work with you to gather as much information from the residents as we can to roll into this project. So from there, we go to identifying the opportunities and the challenges that are in the town. This is what we call our needs assessment. And it's great because even just as we sort of work our way into this project, we already see some really wonderful opportunities in Arundecoit. Peyton mentioned a very well-developed sidewalk system. One of the things we always try to do is make the best use of existing infrastructure. So this is the most cost-effective path towards meaningful improvements. When there's something out there that's already been paid for and already been built, and we can just enhance it, improve upon it, maybe adaptively reuse it in some sense. So filling in sidewalk gaps falls into that category. Restriping of existing roadways where we don't need to add new pavement, but maybe we can reallocate the space that's there. There's another strategy that can often work. We're interested in active transportation and the synergy with an overall urban ecology and sustainable community. Arundecoit's already been going down that path. I mean, the types of development you see at I Square is a good example. You have pedestrian facilities that double as stormwater management with porous pavements and some of the green infrastructure. We see the Winona Woods street tree inventory, where actually the street trees are recognized as adding to the pedestrian realm and supporting people walking and riding. So we recognize that the transportation infrastructure is part of a bigger package that we hope will encourage and support more walking and riding in the town. Active transportation and recreation is a fairly obvious synergy. There's a robust system of parks and recreational programming in Irondequoit. Active transportation is part of that and can bring some of those things together. Town park system, you have, I think, over 1,200 acres of Monroe County parkland in the town. These are all things that we'll try to connect into an integrated system with the work that we're doing. And then finally, we did mention the intermunicipal connectivity early on. I mean, Irondequoit's an inner-ring suburb, so there's a lot of potential with that proximity. I mean, I think it's less than 5 miles from here to City Hall in Rochester. You have numerous connecting roadways between those two municipalities. The transit system is a very important connector, and it's utilized by a lot of people moving between adjacent communities. So we're mindful of connecting to your neighbors as well as improvements within the town itself. The Irondequoit neighborhoods are an opportunity in themselves. Mature neighborhoods that are well connected can offer what we call family-friendly routes, also known as bike boulevards in some communities, but identifying parallel routes that are close to but off of main heavily traveled roadways. So these are more bike and ped-friendly alternatives to being on the main roads. We know what works and what doesn't work. They need to be convenient. They need to be close by. There's certain criteria that help these things progress and move forward, but certainly the opportunity exists in Irondequoit, and we'll pin down some of those possibilities and develop them. So once we get all these things on the table, you're going to have a whole lot of alternatives to choose from. And the question will be, what do we move forward with in terms of a recommended package of improvements? So this assessment of alternatives phase is an important part of the project. This is about making choices. And some of the choices are easy, some of them are tougher, there's always compromises. And this process pans out a little bit differently in every community that we work with, because your criteria and your priorities are going to be your own. So, you know, you'll probably see something like this, but it won't be exactly the same rows and columns for Irondequoit. This was a matrix we put together when we did Bike Walk Brighton. But they looked at, essentially they broke it down for every suggested improvement. We looked at the cost impacts. We looked at the impacts on the different user groups. So all the different travel modes as well as emergency vehicles. And then we looked at what we called sustainability impacts. These are essentially impacts on the environment. So balancing all those things out, you can come up with a short list of priority recommendations that make the most sense for the town of Irondequoit. And that's the process that we'll design with your help and work through during the project. When we get to the recommendations, they're going to fall into some different categories. We'll have on-road recommendations, for example, shared use lanes, bike lanes, restriping. We'll have off-road recommendations. They could be shared use trails. They could be improvements at destinations, enhancements to bicycle parking. There'll be a lot of discussion about the pedestrian network and how to improve that. And, you know, what we look for is an integrated package. So if one improvement can fulfill multiple functions, that's a really good return on your investment. What you see here is one of the graphic packages. We always try to provide one or two fairly high-end graphics for the more visionary, aspirational aspects of your project. You will end up with a range of improvements, from very low-cost, low-hanging fruit to long-term, more ambitious projects that are really trying to fulfill a vision for Irondequoit. This was a graphic that was done for the Route 104 corridor study in Wayne County, but it just shows the transformation from what they had in a very automobile and dominated environment to what was actually feasible and achievable if they implement in phases over time. All of these things follow some level of accepted design guidance, whether it's federal highway or New York State DOT, ADA compliance, or AASHTO for facilities like off-road pathways. We look at what's required, and then we put it together in a way that responds to the needs of the community. The importance of the graphics is it gets people excited, and it helps you visualize what could be in your community. It's also a real good tool for future fundraising. One thing we try to keep our eye on is this document should help you leverage money to move forward for implementation and construction. We've been very successful at that with previous towns we've worked with, and our work doesn't stop at the end of this planning exercise. This should be the first step to meaningful improvements in Arundecoit. This is a recent project. This is under construction in the town of Brighton now. We're very focused on the link between active transportation and public transit. That's a very important piece for the town of Arundecoit, and we're learning more and more about the synergy there. Basically, every ride on a bus starts with somebody walking or riding a bike. All buses now for RTS are equipped with bike carriers, so they're recognizing how those two modes of transportation can fit together. This is a great statistic. People who ride the bus basically get a lot more activity than people who are transporting themselves by cars. And this sort of data are the kind of things that we just compile as we go along and add fuel to the fire and really support the why of how we want to try to do these things. The other thing to note with this particular project are the partnerships that are going into it. The community partnerships are what's needed to move towards reality with some of these improvements. This particular project included the town of Brighton. It included New York State DOT, because this is a state road and they own the roadway. It included several of the business owners who had to grant some easements, okay, to actually implement this suite of improvements onto private property. It included the Brighton School District, which is just down the road and was a partner there as well. And finally, New York State Environmental Facilities Corps, which actually paid for this project. Now, this may look like an active transportation project, but the funding was focused on stormwater management. So we try to recognize where there might be some overlap between funding sources, and something that you might get for one purpose can also serve your needs in enhancing pedestrian and bicycle facilities. So that's sort of a new frontier in the funding scheme, and identifying funding opportunities is part of our scope for this project. So what is this all going to lead to? Well, we think it's going to lead to some real results and some built projects in Arundecoit. And I think one of the things we're most proud with our partnerships is virtually every client we've had in Monroe County has seen some real things come out of their active transportation plans. And this is just a snapshot of some of them. City of Rochester, since doing their bicycle master plan in 2010, has installed more than 45 lane miles of bicycle facilities. They've established bicycle parking, different levels all over the city. They've built bicycle service stands. They've been designated as a bicycle-friendly community by the League of American Bicyclists. And it's just ongoing. So they are building momentum and doing more, and far from slowing down after the plan ends, things are speeding up in the city. Brighton, they completed their plan a couple years later. There was a key trail connection that was identified in that plan, and within a year after completion, they had negotiated a deal through an incentive zoning exercise with a developer to secure that corridor. That project is currently in the design phases and will go to construction next year. They have planned and are getting ready to implement their first bike boulevard soon. Yeah, so probably that'll happen in 2016. Through the Monroe Avenue project, we're making some real pedestrian improvements in the school zones at 12 Corners, which are very important. So they've had a different mix, and depending on what the recommendations are and the priorities of the community, what comes out of it will be different as well. The most recent one our team completed, Sprinkle ran the bike and ped study for the town of Greece, and this was great because that was just last year that was completed, and they're already implementing road projects coordinated with county DOT that are including some of the new sidewalks that were recommended in the plan. So talking to their town planner, their plan is one of the ones that comes off the shelf all the time and gets referred to. And when something's happening in the town, they go back and look at it and say, well, what did we say in terms of active transportation and what are we supposed to do here? So we hope it'll be a living document, but something that's a real useful guide to the town as they move forward into the coming years. As far as the project schedule, our work is supposed to take about a year. We're getting going September 2015. Probably from now till roughly the end of the year, we'll be working on our inventory of existing conditions and our needs assessment. When that gets done, that'll be the first big public meeting where we really want to get as many people in as we can to respond to the information that we're putting on the table. From there, we go to alternatives and recommendations. That'll happen mostly in the spring of 2016. We'll produce a draft report sometime during the summer. There'll be another public meeting to review all of those ideas. We'll get another round of input in terms of what people like, don't like. If we miss something, we can still pick up on it. And then just about a year from now, we hope to be submitting a final document to the town for their approval. So that's kind of the overview of the process we go through and what we hope to accomplish. We're happy to answer any questions about the process, how we're going to do things, when we're going to do things. We're also happy to take any first initial thoughts on what anybody thinks we should be addressing, or if there's areas of concern. I mean, I threw a couple of prompt questions up here. We always like to ask people, what do you think the barriers are? What's preventing you from walking and riding in Irondequoit more than you do? We'd like to ask, what sort of improvements do you think are most important? What would be most supportive of you using active transportation? I mentioned that we will identify 6 priority intersections. If you have some candidates, speak up, throw them out there, that's fine. If you have roadway segments that you feel are problematic or intimidating for active transportation use, any particular improvements at destinations in Irondequoit, or just in general, any other needs that you see or any other opportunities for this project. We're happy to answer any questions you have or take your thoughts.
My question is, what plans are you looking into bikeways from the zoo to the Stutson Bridge area along the river?
So looking for connectivity between the river and the zoo.
Yes.
That goes down as a priority connectivity piece for us. The fact that you mentioned that means that there's a need for it. We haven't looked at any particular solutions or routes at this point. We're just in the very early phases of sort of gathering the data. But that's a good suggestion as a piece that needs to be in place.
There is an existing rail bed that runs along the river that could be easily transposed into way out through the zoo.
Well, sure. That was studied in the Irondequoit Seneca Trail study. So that's a piece of information that we have, and it'll certainly roll over into this plan and maybe advance it, which would be great.
There's also a piece that goes from Rock Beach Road along behind some houses to the old railroad track that runs over across Washington Avenue, and that's a rail bed that's not been bought by anybody yet. Apart from Rock Beach Road up to where it goes into the park has been acquired by individual landowners. This piece of property is gone, but that would be a good piece to acquire.
That's a great suggestion. So yeah, railroad beds and linear properties like that are certainly opportunities, and we'll look into, how feasible and what the opportunities are.
I'll just see a connection across the Bay Bridge, get out to the Webster Trail. You can get all the way from Seabreeze almost up to where the 104 expressway goes across the Rhinelander Bay. But if you hung a road, it's an expensive thing to do, but it would sure be a good connector to get out to Webster. It's pretty hard to get up Empire Boulevard on a bicycle.
It is. That's a tough road.
And then the bay opening the way it is, and mostly it's that revolving bridge there is not permanent, so probably won't be, but that would be a good solution to get across.
That's great. Absolutely. Yes, ma'am.
You may be aware that we had 2 libraries, and now we have, and they were each by a high school, and now we have one that's not by any high school. I am really concerned that students and adults as well can get to the library safely without a car. And as you come from Arundecoit Plaza down Titus Avenue, there's one area there's no sidewalk at all. Another place is really, really skinny. And I think those sidewalks need to be worked on.
Okay, great. Thanks.
You had mentioned the importance of having synergy between RTS and Arundecoit. And without going into a lot of detail, and I can give you detail because I'm a bus rider, the bus system really doesn't serve the people of Arundecoit. It serves the people downtown. But if you live north of Titus Avenue, the only place you can go by bus is downtown. You can't get to this library by bus, except maybe a couple of times a day. You have to take 3 different buses to get here from Arundecoit. When this meeting ends, there's no way to get back to St. Paul Boulevard or any place east of here by bus. Somebody mentioned going out. There's no bus service in and out of Ridge Road areas. You can't get to General Hospital without going downtown. You can't get to the post office. You can't get to the bank. You can't get to Home Depot. You can't get to any of these places without first going downtown.
So that was a really long list to write down, but I think I got it. Yeah, and we will be looking at that. And I know, RTS is making changes.
They have what is called a hub and spoke,
Right,
but not
right.
everybody wants to go to the hub. There is no what you would call cross-town. Across Titus Avenue, across Ridge Road is really what would help.
Yeah.
Can we ask you a question as well? Aside from the locations of the bus service and the origins and destinations, as a bus rider in the town, can you characterize how well how good the bicycle and/or pedestrian connections are to those transit stops? Do you have
Well,
any
I
input?
use a bicycle a
Okay.
lot, preferably, because it's great exercise, it's a good way to get around. But in the wintertime, for me, that's out of the question. It's very, very time consuming to do that. Sometimes the bus racks are full, they hold only 2 bikes.
Sure.
So for recreational purposes, I think that's great. Take your bike, put it on the bus, go to Pittsford, ride along the canal. But for day-to-day things that people want to do, I want to purchase something at Home Depot, I'm not going to carry it back on my bike, for example. So it doesn't really, the link is nice. It's bike service, but the biking and walking is great if there are things that are close by.
Great, thank you.
First, before I ask a question, I just went for priority intersections. I would say Seneca and Titus. There's a major crossing area there for students from Winona Woods going to Rogers, and it's at that point they don't get busing, so they have to go by bike or walking, and there's no traffic lights. It's very dangerous. Also, Titus and St. Paul is a very odd intersection there. Traffic, it kind of goes off to an angle, and there's often accidents. People that live in that area are very, very worried. And then also in St. Paul and Cooper, a young boy got seriously injured recently with a family that just moved to Arundecoit. It was quite disheartening to see the parent comment on Facebook about it. He was very gracious, but this young boy, and a blind person could see that that's a very dangerous intersection because it's like a V that goes in there. And along that lines, I'm a little worried because our timeline for Arundecoit seems to be behind the curve, because I know that St. Paul is a state road or Monroe County road, and they're having a meeting next week about repaving and doing that road. And it's next week, and we're going to be talking about our plan. And I feel like, you know, and also Hudson, that's also going to be resurfaced. I believe they're going to be talking about that. And there would be, I mean, you guys seem to really know what you're talking about. It'd be great if you were, you know, there, or I don't know what's the plan there.
Yeah, so the timing of those two didn't quite line up the way we had hoped. But we're going to stay in communication with the town and with the DOT so that at least we're informed of what's happening with both projects. I mean, it would have been ideal if this work had been done a year before they started their design work. Didn't happen that way. So we will try to make the best of the situation and, you know, stay in touch with that and align with them as best we can.
And that's been a request that's been loud and clear from the town, so we've been aware of it coming into this and are going to make that a focus in the early stages of the project.
Sir?
Yes, I'm a runner and a cyclist, and my running route is probably, I consider one of the most dangerous parts of Irondequoit. And that's the mile square block, that's Bridge Road East, Portland Avenue, Titus, and Hudson. When I run on that square 4 miles or bike on it, that's the most dangerous parts for me. And especially as a jogger runner, when you're running on the sidewalks on Bridge Road East, I can hardly ever run that without getting run over from somebody turning off Ridge Road East into either the tops or all those strip mall places. There's no striping, pedestrian crossing striping for people that would be in a run in a gate on both those sides. That's dangerous to me. And then Ridge Road East especially, and I'm had some experience, so I'm prepared to handle it. But I would see most casual cyclists, Ridge Road East be very intimidating, and then Hudson being very intimidating, and then Titus isn't as intimidating, but I don't think it has as much room for cyclists. It's a narrower road.
Right.
So, and just as an insight, that quadrant that I mentioned has some very interesting connectors that like along Hudson there, where the apartment complexes are, there is a natural greenway connection to the inner workings of that section that's not utilized, that should be utilized for bikes. It's between chain link fencing and where that home is now, that senior citizen's home. There's an actual connection between Hudson and there that should be mowed and opened up so bikes from that inner area can get out to Hudson without going down Drake or anything. And then there's that section, I don't know what's happened to it, between Wegmans, the new Wegmans, and the old Chase Pitkins, and that the church area and the Seneca Park area, where there was a natural bikeway. I don't know if that's still in place or not. I don't know the streets, but there's a church there, and it connects directly behind the old Wegmans, which is now, it's not occupied, but there's an actual connection there that should be looked at.
That's great. I will definitely look at those, and sometimes there are opportunities out there that
They
we can
were there in the
utilize.
past, and then they get overgrown and not used, but it's still a right-of-way that should be
Sure,
opened up.
sure. No, that's excellent.
Going along with what this gentleman just said, I'm a regular walker and I have a couple of walking partners. We make safety a priority and we seek out intersections with lights, pedestrian walking signs. There needs to be driver education and better understanding of what the laws are for pedestrians. I've lost track of how many times we followed the walk sign and almost been run over. And so it's not even a given for us anymore. We don't assume it's going to work. And there are some that don't even have walk signs. The new one at Garden and Titus going north, there's a walk sign that comes on, but when on our return, when we're heading south, it never turns, we have to cross against the light. The other thing, in the winter when we walk, there are many unplowed sidewalks, and it seems to be that the number of unplowed sidewalks has increased over the years that we've walked, which forces us to walk on the road, and that's not safe either.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm a bicycle commuter at least part of the time, and St. Paul Boulevard is my route, and when I'm coming back from downtown, most of the drive through the city has a bicycle route except for a couple of sections, and it's fascinating because the second that there's not a bicycle path, people start cursing me out. I mean, it's really, I mean, you go from this section and then you go into a section where there's no stripe, and they automatically feel that you're breaking some felony law or something. It's amazing. And the only time I've been hit bicycling was in a small section that didn't have a bicycle route along the side of St. Paul. The Irondequoit doesn't have anything on St. Paul, and it would be a huge help. It would be great if we had lines of.
Just to go back to the last comment for a moment, we will be focusing on a lot of infrastructure improvements, but we'll be sure to also be looking at encouragement, education type activities, and potentially even enforcement as well, so that we're doing kind of both sides of the equation, the physical infrastructure, but also the more educational components. I'll go back there first. Let's go.
Could you talk a little bit about the jurisdiction issues between county versus town roads and whatever other jurisdictions are at play and how that works? Or is that not a part of your plan?
No, it's very much a part of the plan. We're looking, and that's the first thing we do when we look at our roadway network, is who has jurisdiction over those roads. We have county, we have state roads, and we have locally owned roads. And we have about a 40-mile study network, center line miles. So we do look at that because literally those entities own those roadways. So talking about improvements to those roadways is the same as almost like talking to a private property owner and suggesting things they should do at their house. What I will say is we interact with Monroe County and State DOT on every project we do. So that's a conversation that we try to have early on. They are stakeholders that we engage right at the beginning. We learned a long time ago, you don't just come to them with some great ideas at the end of the project. You want them to be part of the process, and that's the best way to move any of the ideas forward. So absolutely, the jurisdiction has a lot to do with the types of improvements that we'll consider feasible for those particular roadways. And, you know, we've developed some relationships. We try to lean on those as heavily as we can and make as much progress as we can. Got anything to add? No, that's good. Okay.
A friend of mine who lives in the apartment right on Titus Avenue near Rockport Plaza, she doesn't drive, and the question is, how can she get to the library? What she suggested was that there be a bus that runs from Rockport Plaza down Titus Avenue to the library, and the students from the high school could get to the plaza and ride that bus as well as other people.
That's a great suggestion. It'd be nice to see something like that happen.
There is a bus, it's the 33. It doesn't run very frequently, and it doesn't go north of Cooper, so I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
It needs to be, we need more cross-town.
Cross-town, yeah, yeah.
Just a thought process. The U of R has its own bus service where they take the students between like the Eastman School of Music and the main campus. Couldn't they somehow utilize some like the school buses? They have like a revolving service during, so they can take the kids and the people in and around, or like a loop and around, they're going to take people around. I know they do that in Austin. If you go to the University of Texas, they have a UT bus that's in the city, and the students just get on that bus and it takes them back and forth to campus. So they could maybe do something like that, whether it's just in the town or around the
Localized circulator.
Bus service.
The town has talked about some kind of transportation that we go back and forth to town, across Titus, across Ridge Road, across maybe even Lake Shore Boulevard, where we be connected. Because there's buses that go downtown or from St. Paul Boulevard, and then from Culver Road, but there's no connection across. So they talked about having like a trolley or something like that.
Well, I think, what we will hope to accomplish in this plan is identifying some of those priorities for the next level of public transit in Irondequoit. And that's the first step, is really getting the public input, doing our homework, and then documenting what the priorities would be. So we're not just sort of asking for everything everywhere, but we target our needs a little bit. So these are great suggestions. Yeah,
I
Mike?
would also mention RTS is studying band pool now. That could be an opportunity for Irondequoit to team up with RTS and maybe get some localized band services.
Yeah, absolutely. Could be.
I don't think it was mentioned yet tonight, but I just want to focus on the importance of Cooper Road, and I'm speaking on the west side because I live there. So where St. Paul and Cooper intersect, and you have the two schools right there, the number of kids that walk, ride bikes, skateboard on that thoroughfare is incredible. Going to I-Square, and it's a walking district, so many of the kids are walking to school.
Right.
So I just think that section could use a lot.
Thank you. Sir?
I heard a number of people comment about St. Paul and Hudson, and I just want to make sure that everyone here knows that there's a public meeting on October 6th at 7 right here, with the county, and that would be an incredible opportunity for you to voice your concerns about bike and ped safety on the boulevard. So again, that's October 6th. At 7 o'clock, please don't correct me if I'm wrong. But if that would be the time to really get your concerns out there about the upcoming repave and restripe.
Yeah, it's really important to go to those meetings and make sure they know that you are concerned and want to see improvements for bicycles and pedestrians.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Somebody had asked about jurisdiction, which I think is a really important question, especially as it affects St. Paul Boulevard. Because it's my understanding the county will not put in dedicated bike lanes because they don't believe in them. They'll say it limits other forms of transportation from using those lanes, which is really nonsense, because if a trash collector needs to get over, they're going to go over. But I think that needs to be clarified, because people can get their hopes up that, oh yes, St. Paul Boulevard really needs a bike lane, but is it possible or not possible, the way things stand now? So
I'm
is it a
not
jurisdictional issue?
I'm not Monroe County, so take this with a grain of salt. But my understanding is a lot of the concern on the part of the county is with the physical designation of a bike lane through signage and striping. They are, generally speaking, not talking about that corridor, more open to having space that bicyclists could use, like many of the other paved shoulders we have around the town right now. But the concern is more with the designation. And I can speak to the fact that a lot of national research has shown that from a bicyclist perception standpoint, having the space is the most important thing. Signing and striping is great, and it provides some practical benefits, particularly at signalized intersections. But if you can win the battle to get the space, that can go a long way. So again, don't want to speak to that corridor in particular, but that's been my observation in recent years.
I'm making a lot of noise here. There is an alternative route to St. Paul Boulevard, and when I ride a bike, I try to stay off of major roads because they're dangerous. Even if you have striping, cars go zooming by pretty fast. You're not going to get high speed. But if you take Ramona Boulevard down, you can get all the way over to the zoo, and there's bike lanes and traffic at the end of a couple of the streets that are. If you take Winona all the way to the end, there's a little bikeway passage that goes through to the next street. I can't remember if it's Maplehurst or whatever. But you turn right, there's a paved path there that goes all the way out to past the zoo and out. So you're bypassing St. Paul. It's a lot safer than going down St. Paul.
That's one of the things we want to really accomplish in this plan is those alternative routes. We have to make sure that they're connected, and that seems like a great opportunity. We also have to make sure that, you know, if bicyclists are using those routes, that they are able to maintain connectivity to the major destinations along those more arterial type roads. You know, there's a reason Just like, the reason that a lot of motorists are using St. Paul, there's a reason a lot of bicyclists and pedestrians want to do it as well, because they need to get to some of the destinations there. So not only identifying those parallel corridors, but enhancing access between those corridors back to St. Paul in this case.
I would just like to offer a comment on St. Paul Boulevard North. I'm going back a few years, maybe at least 10, maybe 15, but there was a big fight with the town, I don't know who was mayor or whatever, that they rebuilt the Boulevard North, and there's a narrowing, because at a certain point, they wanted to make St. Paul Boulevard wider all the way. And there was public opposition big time to that. So if you go down St. Paul Boulevard, you'll see the narrows, and that's where the fight was lost. They lost that a long time ago, because the concept was to make it wider all the way, and they didn't do it, and I don't think they could retrofit that now.
I mean to pile on to St. Paul Boulevard, but it's a real problem. Where it is 2 lanes, and when you do your studies, I suggest you drive it a few times, especially north of Cooper towards Thomas Avenue. But there isn't a time when I drive that road in either direction where there isn't a car coming in the opposite direction that doesn't cross either the center line or their lane line. The lanes there are simply too narrow. There's no doubt about it. Buses can't fit through there with a car next to them. Trucks and even large SUVs cannot stay in their lane on the sections of St. Paul where it's 2 lanes.
Especially when it curves.
Especially where it curves. And I consider that a problem not only for drivers, but also for the pedestrians that are on the sidewalks and things. There have been a number of cars that have gone off the side of the road. And a number of years ago, I did send an email to someone at Monroe County, and the response that I got back was that the accident data doesn't suggest that there's a problem there. Well, that person clearly never drove that route and never had to avoid a car that crosses the yellow line coming in the opposite direction. And again, I promise you, if you went down there tonight or any other time, when you're doing your studies, you will see a car cross the double yellow line.
Sometimes too, when you're driving and there's a garbage pickup, the garbage cans are in the road, sticking out.
The reason that road was narrowed, because the environmental tree huggers did not want to cut down the oak trees that are in that section. So the county narrowed the road to save the oak trees. And
Which I think is commendable.
Yes, sir.
If I can just comment, all three comments, the problem isn't the width of the lanes, it's that we have 4 lanes jammed in the right of way there. It really needs to be brought down to 3 lanes, 1 lane in each direction, turn lane in the center, remove the turning traffic from the equation, and you've got free-flowing traffic in both directions. Monroe County's problem is that they follow a strict guideline as far as the traffic counts. We were told that we have an average daily vehicle count of about 11,000 cars, between 10 and 11,000 cars a day. And at that number, they won't even entertain the 4-to-3 conversion, which I know I've seen projects in the city of Rochester where the count is 17,000 cars and conversion is none. So I think that really is a problem. And somebody said speed is the issue too. Completely agree. Cars treat that section like a racetrack. I don't know if it's because it's curvy or whatever and it's fun. It is fun, I'll admit it, it's fun. But, it's a serious safety problem. That section of St. Paul is a bottleneck too, because it's really the only north-south connector between, to connect that section of the rendezvous. I am an advocate for bike boulevards. I think a lot of our neighborhood schools are kind of off of these arterial streets, and bike boulevards will work for a lot of them. But that northwest section of the rendezvous is kind of cut off because St. Paul's really the only connection point there. And The other thing that Monroe County stuck to is the AASHTO guidelines, which Sprinkle, I know, has a lot of influence over. 11-foot lane width is like their standard in Monroe County, when in fact AASHTO recommends anywhere between 10 and 12. So I think that really needs to be addressed because it makes no sense to adhere to a standard of 11 feet regardless of the road in a neighborhood, especially through a residential neighborhood. So I'd like to see that addressed.
Just to respond to one thing, anecdotally, 11,000 sounds like an awfully low number to cut off from consideration of a road day like that. I believe that road has been on the county's road day candidate list for some time now, in spite of that fact. So we'll look at it.
Yes.
Sir.
There are a few spots that make me nervous when I bicycle these days. One, I think, is just because the road isn't done yet, but from here to Culver on Titus, it's pretty scary bicycling there. Going up Thomas Ave, not going down. When I'm going down Thomas Ave, I'm going as fast as the cars, so it's okay. But going up, I could be on the sidewalk, but it's bumpy and it's not nice to ride on, and I think I'm not supposed to be there anyways. But nobody gives me any room riding up Thomas Ave. But then the worst part is what everyone's been talking about, kind of from the top of the flats or Pine Grove on St. Paul going to where it would branch off to Cooper. I won't even bicycle in the road there. That's the one place I do go on the sidewalk. And it's super bumpy, but then I feel bad because I'm often encountering people walking with dogs and,
It's illegal too, right?
Right.
Technically, you're breaking the law.
So that's the worst place of all for cycling in our way. Then some things are confusing. I really prefer the solid line separating me from the cars. They do have a lot of those markers with the picture of the cyclist, and you're kind of sharing the space. I don't think the cars really pay attention to that. Then sometimes I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to be doing, like on Stutson Bridge when you're coming back from Charlotte. There's a lane that's like a bike lane, but what if I want to go right, which I usually do, and should I be over there? I'm not quite sure what I'm supposed to do. And it seems like education would be really good, like has already been mentioned. Non-cyclists do not want to slow down, and I'm really inconveniencing them. And then if it's 2 lanes and I'm in front of them and they can't go out into the other lane to go, the oncoming lane to go around me, they won't slow down or stop. They'll just kind of push me right out of the way and give me no room at all. I've been fortunate to do a lot of cycling in Cape Town, South Africa, and it's like an awesome, awesome cycling city. And everywhere you look, there's the, I think it's 5 to stay alive slogan everywhere. I think it's 5 feet between cars and cyclists. And it's on everyone's t-shirts, it's on the cyclist jerseys, it's on billboards, it's everywhere you look. It's like very known, this motto of safety, and all the car people see it, and I think they adhere to it.
One of the things we could work toward in future public meetings where we have more opportunity for smaller group interaction is putting together some materials for rules of the road to clarify expectations, not just for motorists, but also for your bicyclists and pedestrians. And of course, if you have specific questions about a particular location, we could work with you on that as well. Sir.
You kind of go off of that. What I've noticed a lot is that there's this tendency for a lot of businesses, especially a lot of businesses in Roanoke at least, to not take biking as a serious mode of transportation for their customers. Like for instance, when you go on Ridge Road, and let's say I take my bike because I want to go to a store. I'll take my backpack, I'll buy something, I'll bike home. But so often I find myself not able to find a spot to put my bike.
No bike.
You have very few bike racks around Irondequoit, and I feel like there might be, this complimentary little bike rack for 2 or 3 bikes, but that's it. And I find myself going there and constantly having to turn back because there's not enough space.
One of the pieces of the plan will be to look at zoning type recommendations that may start to touch on bike parking. Hopefully, we'll have a chance to interact with some business owners as well. I think there's a bit of a trend nationwide toward more of a realization that promoting biking and walking can and frequently is good for business. Having people walking and riding in front of your storefronts at 3 or 10 miles an hour instead of driving by at 35 makes a difference as well.
And they also have the bicycle-friendly business program, which might be something to think about.
Sure. That's great. I live in Roanoke Woods again, and I traveled that Seneca Trail, and it's absolutely gorgeous, but at times can be pretty scary and treacherous because it's just not developed. And also, once you go on it from the zoo, pretty much, and you're committed all the way up to Charlotte, or else you have to turn back. There's no way to get back up, and it seems to be like just one of the best types. Yeah, it's just a straight. There's one spot you can get off, and then the rest are all the way down. So it's a great resource for Irondequoit that most people don't know. People live in Irondequoit and they have no clue how beautiful that is because it's just no indication of it.
Yeah.
But the second thing I just want to say is that I saw you had a Facebook or Twitter thing on there, and I would highly encourage you to join, especially the Irondequoit webpage, Facebook webpage. It's about 1,200 members. And there's been a lot of comments about safety, transportation. There was a very long discussion recently about I-Square, over about 40 different comments, and Evan Bella was involved in it too, about safety, and it's searchable. On Facebook you can go up to a little window there in that group, and you can search, traffic, bicycling, and you can come up with topics over the years. But it's well worth your time to join it and then just look at previous comments because there's a lot. It pops up all the time about safety and in this community about pedestrian safety and so forth. So thanks. That's great.
Yeah, I was going to say, I used to live in the flats, and Seneca Park Avenue ends at the access to that trail. And as long as I've ever known that, there's a real negative attitude because there's on both sides from, I think, St. Joseph Street Avenue, which goes back up to Van Boris. That's a dead ends there, and maybe 500 feet or more on both sides says no parking. I can't imagine in my mind why there's no parking signs. Maybe something in the 1950s or 1940s, but that no parking where people, if they want to be able to park there, if they want to access that area, needs to be addressed. Because that's for 30 years or 40 years, but I can't understand why there's no parking signs on both sides of the road there at the end of Seneca Park Avenue. If people want to use that lane, that railroad track. There used to be a snowmobile route.
Anything else? Anybody else? That's a great bunch of ideas to get started with. So I think we have several candidates for priority intersections. We'll be looking at those. Really a great bunch of suggestions and a lot of diversity of ideas. So we appreciate that to get us going.
And we'll, as Tom mentioned, we'll have plenty of ongoing opportunities for public involvement, whether it's surveys, either online or otherwise, and the upcoming public meetings where, unlike today, we'll be able to share with you some results and findings and get feedback and take that as we move forward. So hope to see most of you throughout the planning process.
Fantastic.
Any comments from the town to add or conclude?
Close this up here.
All right.
All right, great. Thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation. I just want to close this off by thanking you all for being here tonight and for all of those thoughtful comments. A lot of them aren't the first ones that I've I've heard, which is why this plan is so critical and important, so that we can document this and come up with a plan on how to put all this together to move forward. I do want to raise this. Bradley mentioned this earlier, but I would encourage those folks who are here tonight who do have particular concerns, especially as they relate to St. Paul Boulevard, Hudson, and Titus Avenue, to attend next Tuesday at 7 o'clock right here in this room. Is the open house with the Monroe County Department of Transportation to talk about their restriping proposal. This is the first open house for that. The restriping doesn't take place till next year. So even though we're doing this process now, this was an important piece of our RFP and something that we had discussed with our professionals here tonight from Barton, Judas, and Sprinkle, was that we wanted to make sure we kick this process off first, so that even though this won't be complete when that's restriped, we get this underway and we can start to develop the comments from the public. So I would encourage you to attend that next week. Again, it's Tuesday at 7 o'clock right here in this room. And I also would just like to address, too, I appreciate the comments about RTS and the public bus system as well. And so I just wanted to mention to you as well, RTS is going to be a member of the technical steering committee here, so we will be able to make sure that they're included so that they hear our concerns as well. So it's fantastic that you raised that. So thank you again. Please make sure before you leave you sign up on the sign-in sheet out there. I think we're collecting names and email addresses so we can get back to you with next steps, follow up on some of the stuff that we talked about tonight. So thanks again. Have a great night, and check out the new library before you leave. Take care.